You're listening to the Analuia podcast, where faith and animation collide. Each episode will discuss the various topics in animated movies and TV shows, while also sharing our thoughts and opinions as they relate to faith and spirituality. Get ready to raise a hallelujah. It's time for Analuia.
And you're locked into another episode of the Analuia podcast. My name is Josh, and just finishing up prepping all of our smoothies for the week and beyond, my wife, Rebecca.
Well, what an introduction. Thank you. Yes.
Well, it has to be something different each time.
Well, yeah. And we did prep 21 smoothies.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun.
Plus, it would be pretty boring. It's like, all right, here's my wife, here's she else. That's not going to get people excited. It's like, well, I don't want to listen to Rebecca.
Doubtful. Just saying.
But yeah, the reason that we did prep 21 smoothies is we got a chest freezer.
Woo!
Apparently the last one in Colombia.
Yep.
Because of the whole thing in, Ukraine and Russia that started a few months ago. Everybody was doomsday prepping, buying all the Chester freezers and getting all the meats and frozen stuff. Yeah, well, we got it, and we're loving it so far.
Yeah, only had it a couple hours, but yes. And by prepping smoothies, we mean putting all of the ingredients in a Ziploc bag and putting that in the freezer, not like actually making the full smoothie and blending it up.
Yeah, that would be crazy. That comes later when you want to consume it.
Basically. Right, exactly. It makes it much easier. Dump the whole bag in, put your water in, you're done. Simple.
That's right. Well, again, this month, the month of September, we had just finished Shrek Tender, and we're like, well, wait, we have the one more Friday left in the month. What are we going to do? Well, luckily enough, we have a guest with us today that I am very excited about. Rebecca, if you'll go ahead and do the honors and introduce our guest for this episode.
Yeah, so today we actually have Miya Sae. So she was actually diagnosed with autism at the age of 26, which is quite late in life. But she gave her life to Christ after a miraculous encounter and has been actively pursuing him ever since. She's continually learning how to navigate the world as a neurodivergent Christian in a joyful manner and aspires to help others to do the same. And she also strives to help contribute to bridging the gap, the neglected gap between autism and Christianity. You can usually find her watching anime, gaming, or snuggling with her cats. Welcome to the show, Miya.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is cool.
We're happy to have you on as well. And so, neurodivergent, for our audience that may not know what that is, what is that?
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to define in plain terms, but basically it's brains that work differently, or like brain wiring that isn't what's considered to be quote unquote normal or typical. It's how we think and how we process and how we perceive the world around us. Things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, all these things that are common, but not the majority of the population, or what we would call neurotypical. And these things are usually considered to be disabilities, but different people experience them differently. So neurodiversity is basically the umbrella term for all of it.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for that. That was pretty comprehensive. It seemed like, for those who don't know, I think a lot of people are still using sort of the singular terms of the autism and ADHD, and which those are still valid. But knowing that that's under an umbrella term of neurodivergent, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I guess just like the little disclaimer I like to give is like, in regards to autism, I consider myself knowledgeable, but I'm not an expert. I'm not an autism professional, and mostly just speak from my own experiences and whatever amount of studying I've done. But I don't speak for all autistic people. One of the biggest things that you'll hear in the autism community is that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And so, just that said, and also I am obviously autistic myself, and I have a speech impediment, which sounds like an accent sometimes, so don't mind that.
And
Awesome.
yeah, and yeah, speaking of speech impediments, I struggled with speech and still do from time to time, because S's, R's, a
Mhm,
lot of things were just a very big hurdle for me to overcome. And I'm sure anyone who kind of fits into that, I guess, description, and it can be quite debilitating and
mhm,
really mess with my self-confidence for a while, and I've just recently kind of tried to build that up again. um but yeah, that's one thing that I relate to you, Mia, with having the speech impediment. And it's always comforting to oh, like, I'm not the only one. There's other people that
mhm.
I know that have the same thing that they struggle with.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even tell with you if that is any
Well,
consolation, but yeah, like, it's always my whole life, it's always been, like, just me, out of, like, anyone that I've known, and yeah, it was tough to even just, like, I mean, I was always really, kinda quiet and,
mhm.
kind of solo, like, a lot more so as a kid than I am now, but it was tough to even just, like, want to attempt to talk to people because yeah, like the speech stuff and like the monotone voice that I can't do anything about. And people have always, typically been condescending about it, like you talk funny, and that used to always make me want to curl up and die until I eventually just got to the place of being like, okay, yeah, I talk funny. What's your point? Mhm.
Exactly, and you just have to
Yeah.
learn to roll with it. Like, I got a double header. It was a speech impediment, and I also talk really softly. Even Rebecca will, like,
Yeah,
now is like,
same.
"Well, what did she say?" I'm like, and I had to, like, say it like twice. I'll
Mhm.
get the megaphone out, and we'll see how that.
uh, yeah, yeah, I do sometimes. I'm pretty sure I just did that today. I was like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. If you could speak up.
Well, we were prepping, so your mind was really focused as well.
Well, that and you had a podcast on that
Oh yeah.
I didn't really like,
Okay.
if I'm
Well,
honest.
it was
I didn't
new.
like it because it was things that I don't agree with, but it was interesting. It was people who weren't Christians talking about youth um youth groups and how they're very cult like. And it was I was like, I don't agree with what you're saying. But it's interesting to hear different perspectives. Anyway,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And it's good to listen to people who believe differently than you
Yeah, it
to
gives you
hear.
a different point of view because, I mean,
Yeah.
we've said this before. If we
Mm.
just listen to people we agree with, that's not. I don't find it as very constructive. You don't have anything
Hmm.
to kind of like balance or kind of compare your belief system or your values up against.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what is it they say? Like a faith that can't withstand the fire is hardly one worth keeping.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Mia, and kind of, I don't know, your background. I know it's like a kind of a big audacious question, but but yeah, tell us a little
oh
bit more.
man, yeah, I feel like whenever I'm asked that kind of question, I immediately forget who I am.
I get that.
But yeah, I'm a writer, I'm a Christian, I'm autistic. And yeah, I became a Christian in high school, which is a whole long story. I went to college for social work, which I'm no longer doing. I kind of fell on my face at every position I attempted for many years. And it led to just a lot of soul searching because this was all happening like long before I had any idea about the autism and like my own limits. Um, I guess, yeah, just fast forward to now. I have a day job, but my main focus is authorship and just kind of pursuing the nonfiction path. As of now, I'm a blogger and aspiring memoirist, focusing on like both autism and faith together in adults, because everything's just about kids and they don't talk about us. And yeah, like after just being diagnosed in adulthood and like finally being able to understand like why I am the way that I am and finding fighting off the shame that I've held on to my whole life, which I know I'm not alone in.
Yeah, yeah, that must have been hard too to um what led to that place of finally being able to get diagnosed? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I had no idea. Like, I was, as a kid, apparently diagnosed with all kinds of different things that just the story kept changing over time. So I don't know. But yeah, I was kind of, like in college, I kind of like became like super mega extrovert, or I was like kind of convincing myself of that. And it was, yeah, just kind of, I mean, I pulled it off and like convinced other people and myself that like, I didn't have any social issues. I didn't like struggle in these ways that I kind of pushed down and was in denial about for a while. So I kept doing that until I couldn't anymore, and didn't know why. It was just kind of like for a couple of years, just like felt like I was losing myself and was losing abilities. Like I couldn't like hold conversations with people anymore, or, like handle like even like the most seemingly simple tasks at work, and was just like not wanting or able to like just leave the house most of the time. And I just had no idea what was going on. I thought it was all like personality defects, but it was just like what I would find out, just typical normal autism traits that are extremely common. And like there was nothing wrong with me, but it was just so much like just self abuse mentally, is what I always call it. And I didn't like I started in a place and like most people, just complete ignorance about what autism even is and what it looks like, and it's kind of like, oh, that's not me, and like kind of like diagnosing myself with all these other things, until I like actually started talking with other autism people and like reading books about it and finding out like what it looks like beyond stereotypes, basically. Um, and yeah, I mean, I pretty much knew for a long time, but eventually just kind of got that confirmation when I went to get seen.
Yeah. Did that give you some freedom? Once you
Yeah.
found out, you were like, "Oh, okay, I'm not crazy."
Yeah, I mean, eventually it wasn't like an immediate thing. But yeah, and like I think the biggest thing was just like talking to other people, and like actually kind of around the same time, like people who I'd known for a long time were also like coming out as autistic. And I was just like, what? Like I would have like never guessed, but like these people are awesome. So like what do I have to be upset about?
Exactly. Yeah. That's so great. That's so great that you had a good support system around that time to be like, yeah, it's okay. This is just life. We're living life and, you know, we're all just a little bit different anyway, right?
Yeah.
Well, what about tell us a little bit more about your writing. You said you're getting into more of you said nonfiction, and you've also done some fiction work, right?
I mean, not like officially. I
Okay.
began this whole like author journey because I wanted to tell my testimony and just kind of talk about things that don't really get talked about in church culture. And writing is the best way that I communicate, as speaking is usually not my thing.
And here you are in a podcast.
Yeah, it's taken a lot of stepping out of my comfort zone to start doing these too. But
And that's fantastic. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes we need to be made kind of like uncomfortable to get comfortable with certain
mhm.
things.
Well,
So
that's how we grow, right?
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
a little bit of uncomfort or
Yeah, it's like
discomfort.
with stuff like this, it's like I don't get nervous so much about just like actually doing it, but like I know that the way I hear my own voice, going back to that, like isn't how I actually sound, and I don't like being reminded of that.
Mm.
Like, oh, like I don't even hear like my speech impediment stuff, so it's just like when I hear myself like on video, it's like, oh god, like. But I'm I'm doing better at being okay with it.
That's good. I've found that the more you actually hear yourself or watch yourself, the less weird it gets. You
Mhm.
know? It's like, okay, it's how I sound, it's how I look, and you can look at it with a critical eye. Now it takes a long time to get to that
Yeah.
place, but yeah, little by little. Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as like fiction goes, like I did used to write a lot of fan fiction, but like I never let people I actually know read them. And now that I write professionally, I always want to tell people like, please, I beg of you all, like, do not go looking for my old fanfics because they're so stupid and so cheesy. Like I love fanfics, but like most of my stuff was just like me needing to get fluff out of my system, and I don't even know where it comes from. Like God only knows. But yeah, but then there's like that aspect of creativity where it's like part of you wants to share your stuff with people, even if it's just like a tiny handful of people within the fandom who get it. But then it's like, oh well, they don't actually know me, so it's fine if they judge. Like I'll still sometimes dabble in it now, but basically just for myself. And I don't expect anyone to be impressed with my cringy fluff. But yeah, so
Well,
my
what are your
policy's
favorite?
always been like, anyone who knows me is not allowed to see them. It's illegal.
Nice. Yeah, what are your favorite characters to write about
I mean,
or
it
who?
depends on what fandom I'm obsessed with at the time.
Okay.
um, Yeah, I mean, it's usually, yeah, just like I don't know what it is about like just some like, animes or games or whatever. My brain just like latches on to certain characters that I find interesting and it just becomes an obsession. And it's like if no one else is like writing the story that I want to see, I just do it myself. There's
Neat.
probably a reason why nobody else is doing it because it's just really cringe, but
That's all right. That's what you're here for, right? So, kind of going back to our topic of autism and the church, what is it that you feel like is the biggest disconnect there?
Well, that's not something that I feel like I can make a blanket statement about. Like with a lot of things, and I can only speak from my own experience. But
Yeah.
for me, I'd say the biggest thing has been like just ignorance to the fact that people like me exist, and like the unintentional ableism. Like not in the sense of like looking down on disability, like infantilizing, but kind of like the opposite end of that, where it's like everyone expects you to act neurotypical and think neurotypical and for your life and your walk with God to look the same as everyone else. Like, like that mentality of like, you should be able to do these things because church culture doesn't always think about the fact that, like, despite how we look, not everyone can sit down and have quiet time every day. Not everyone can go to social events all the time because it's sensory overwhelm, and not everyone can go on.
Wow, that was very unexpected. Yes, sorry.
um, yeah, like we can't all, go on mission trips and lead small groups. Like there's so many things that we shouldn't have to feel bad about. We feel like less than as a Christian because of, and it's also like we're not allowed to have interests and hobbies that are like, unless it's like limited to the stuff that's socially acceptable within church culture. Like, you're allowed to love watching football, but you can't love video games, or at least like that's frowned upon. And if you're like me, who has like intense special interests and hyperfixations, then it's a sin because you're only allowed to love things a little bit. Like, there's so many things I feel like just get labeled as sin when it's not even necessarily biblical, but just different. Um,
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think um, for not just neurodivergent individuals, but just individuals in general, like, oh, well, you
yeah.
like anime? Well, that's a sin
Mhm.
because there's some
Yeah, there's
stuff
like
called
demo
hentai
You
yeah,
like it
and
too much.
right,
right.
right. And it's like, oh, well, no, there's different kinds and there's different things. And so okay, so you can't have quiet time, but every single day where it looks a specific way, but maybe there's a different way that you can just go throughout your day having those little conversations. That's how you build
Mhm.
relationship. And every relationship looks different,
It
right?
does, yeah.
Yeah.
Like how you communicate with different friends, your spouse, your parents, all of that, like it's gonna look different. But yeah, those are really good things to bring up. And yeah, thanks for sharing and
Yeah.
for
It's like,
talking about it.
yeah, I guess even to just like give an illustration and like where this all even comes from is like just for a long time, like I felt so much guilt about that, about things like watching anime and like I wasn't allowed to as a Christian, especially if stuff that did get kind of dark and intense at times, because of like just a lot of legalism and false beliefs that I was holding on to at the time. Even though no one like told me that directly, those are like the underlying messages that I picked up. Like in anime, like sometimes stuff does get dark, and that always makes me question, like, am I allowed to watch this? I just feel like Christian culture would tell me this stuff is forbidden and unholy, and I need to repent. But then my buddy pointed out, like, there's gonna be evil in basically every story. That's kind of the point. But like in
Right.
the end, that evil's gonna be defeated. Kind of like the time we're living in now before Jesus comes back and claims ultimate victory. But
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like, I went through that season of like just feeling so weighed down with guilt and shame for just enjoying life and doing non-spiritual stuff. Um, and like I think I started to crack when I started believing that I had to stop watching the show we'll be talking about. Like right when it was getting good, and I was just so deeply interested in it, and it was like on top of all these other things that like I was trying to stop because I thought I had to, and that God was disappointed in me, especially given my hyperfixation tendencies that I can't help. But I was like having some, just intense prayer sessions, and it was literally like sobbing to God, like, why can't I watch this show I love? Like, why am I not allowed to do anything? Because I was like starting to believe that I was only allowed to do like churchy things. Otherwise, I was a filthy idolater because I love stuff too much. And like I didn't get an answer in that because I'm not one of those people who hears audibly from God, never have been. But I was like, God, like I hate that I have to do this. I want to scream, but like if it's what you want, I'll give it up. And just kind of speculating, but like I imagine if I did get that audible response, he might have been like, whoever said that that's my will for you, like you're assuming things. Um, and like I guess to be fair, like sometimes he does ask us to give stuff up. Maybe I was supposed to give it up for the season because actually at the time I was planning my wedding, and so it's like probably best that I focused on that instead of binging a 700 episode show. But I just got into this toxic cycle of like just believing that lie that I'm not allowed to do anything. I wouldn't allow myself to do anything besides reading the Bible and praying and all that, until I eventually got connected with a mentor at church who changed my life. But yeah, I think just that mentality was due in large part to just that the popular Christian narrative that those specific things are like the only ways that you can spend time with God, which just isn't true. Like he's with us 24/7, no matter what we're doing. Like, if I can spend time with my husband, with them watching anime, why not Jesus too? And then there's there's also this thing that people like to say of, watching that show or playing that game or eating that chocolate bar, like it's not going to fulfill you. Like only God can fulfill you. It's like, yes, I know, but does that mean I'm not allowed to play that game or eat that chocolate bar and enjoy it? Because like that's how it translates to me. Like, if this thing is so meaningless and stupid, I just shouldn't do it at all. And I just need to read my Bible and listen to sermons 10 hours a day because that's all that matters, apparently. But yeah, it's just like it becomes just such like shame-based religion, and like when I'm not feeling joy living that way, it's usually blamed on a lack of faith, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. And it this doesn't need to be that way. So TLDR, but that's like a big focus of what I do now is like pushing back against legalism and just toxic traditional beliefs that aren't even biblically sound, but just chain people down, and pointing back to the grace of God and the fact that even if we get stuff wrong, even if I'm like way off on all this, like the blood of Jesus is infinitely more powerful and covers us in everything.
Absolutely agree with
Yes.
that. And
Amen.
I resonate with a lot of that legalism stuff because
Mhm.
um, for our audience who has listened to the podcast for fairly recently, I talk about, I'll rant sometimes like, hey, I grew up in the Pentecostal church. These are some of the things that kind of like surrounded that. And yeah, a lot of what you said, um, hey, that's not going to fulfill you. You should be, the big term when I was attending a Pentecostal church is you need to press in. You need to press into
Mhm.
God. And if you do
Mhm.
that, you won't want to do any of this other stuff. And like, so if I press into God, I can't watch, A, B, C, whatever again. Um, and it was just a whole bunch of like, I felt my relationship with God was a checklist. Or like, okay, did I have
Mhm.
quiet time?
Yeah.
Okay, did I read my Bible? Okay, did I attend youth group? Okay, did I go to Sunday service? Okay, did I go to Sunday evening service? All right, check, check. And it just felt very transactional for a lot of years.
Yeah, I think it's an important phrase too that both of you guys just said was um, that the church narrative typically is, reading your Bible, getting to know Jesus is the only thing that really matters. And yeah, I think to a degree that's true. Like when it comes to our salvation, when it comes to all of that. I think there's a better way to say that though. I think the better way to say it is that is the most important thing, That's the most important thing in our lives, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other important things,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
like
the
God
most
is
important.
not, he's not separate from life.
Right.
He doesn't go away when you're not reading the Bible.
Right.
And like I spent like so many years trying to, yeah, just like stop doing everything. And like the big thing for me is like, daydreaming about like stories and stuff and fictional characters and just all that hyperfixation stuff. And like I tried to stop for a while, even though I couldn't, because that's literally the wiring of my brain. But like during all that time, like people would seriously be like, well, just stop doing that. Just stop thinking about it. And I was like, thanks, I'll try
Can I
that.
stop breathing?
Like, like all the, yeah, the cliches and the churchy language, like just trust God more, just spend more time with God. It's like, first of all, not helpful. And also, yeah, it's like now I can say, like, I'm always spending time with God because he's always with me and I'm allowed to enjoy his creation. And of course, yeah, that's not to say that we don't need to do intentional things like Bible reading, like that's
Right.
obviously still important, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the only way to be a quote unquote good Christian. And I think that mentality can even become an idol in itself. It
Oh,
becomes, yeah,
absolutely.
just a
Like,
work-based thing.
yeah, it's a very self-righteous mentality, and you can fall so easy into pride and yeah, and keep that held up. Yeah, and there's many ways that God reveals himself, right? Okay, so there's two main ways that he reveals himself. He reveals himself obviously through his word, and he reveals himself through creation, which would
Mhm.
be, like what we're going to be talking about today, and through nature and through, all of these things. And both are important. Both are the ways that he reveals himself. I think this whole podcast is kind of um, you know, made that point in a way that like, hey, you can like different things and
Yeah,
still be a Christian and it still speaks to you.
Wow, imagine that.
I know, crazy, right?
yeah, like it's even still just like for me, like there's so much like cognitive dissonance that goes into it when you like hold on to all the legalism for so long. Like I still will catch myself now, like watching something, be like, "Am I sure? Like, is this actually okay?" Like I don't know, just kind of old mind habits, I guess. But yeah, just
Yeah.
kind of like even when it's hard because most of the time, these messages from church like are well intentioned. Um, but yeah, just like the way it comes off a lot of times just sends me into spirals like that. It
Mm.
kind of the legalism thing just kind of makes me think of this thing that a friend of mine says. Shout out to Wolf on Discord, but she says this thing that I love because it's so true that a lot of times the church treats Jesus and the gospel as the gateway drug to Christianity. It's like once you're in, like now you got to do all this other stuff to actually be saved and do all these things to fix
Uh,
yourself, which is just not cool. Like
yeah.
Jesus and the gospel are what save you. That's kind of the whole point of the gospel.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, that is a really good phrase. I like that. Because yeah, I mean, what's crazy? What's crazy to me, the more that I read the New Testament in particular, the more I realize most of what Paul talked about is like, no, salvation is only through Jesus. You don't have to work for it other
Yeah,
than that. Now you
literally.
do, right? And it's like, yeah, he has good works for you set apart, but it's different. It comes from a different place. You're like, wow, I am saved. God loves me. I'm secure. I want to do good works. That is the difference between oh, I have to do good works for God so he'll love me and so I'll be saved and I can continue to be in the body of Christ. And it's like, nope, nope, that's not where that comes
Mm.
from. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I've noticed that a lot about Paul too. And actually, Colossians and Ecclesiastes are like my big like go-to places for this kind of stuff because it talks about how we should enjoy the little things in life and that God approves of it, like literally those exact words, God approves of it. And Paul talks about like not letting other people disqualify you from the faith with legalism or telling you that you're not doing enough stuff. And he actually speaks against like extreme self-denial, like what I was doing before. Yeah, just that emphasis that like Jesus is sufficient. And at first I was like, wait, like the Bible actually says this? Because it's like I had read through the Bible before, and it's like, how did I miss that? Um, yeah, and I also didn't know like the Bible tells us not to judge those who are outside the faith. And I was like, what? Like, you mean
Yeah.
that's not something that just people say just because they don't want to make people mad? Like, the Bible actually says that. Like, there's so many things that, like, just get missed or that we forget about.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. I think, yeah, that one definitely gets missed. You can't judge the people who aren't in the faith because
Yeah.
they don't live by our rules. They don't know truth yet. And when they do, well, then we can have those heart to heart conversations of, hey, man, you're in sin. I love you. I want you to know that you get right with God kind of a thing. You know, that's when it's like, okay, we can do that. But yeah. Well, great. I think this is a great time to jump into our main topic today. Very
Yeah.
excited.
Yes, very exciting. And for those of you who are watching the video version, Mia is sporting a very stylish headband. Yep.
Yeah, Leaf Village
Yeah.
headbands.
I
Yeah.
was telling them, like, yeah, like it wasn't even the plan, but I got a bad haircut and my bangs are all jacked up. So I was just like, might as well just bring out the Naruto stuff. Got
There you
the
go.
Yep.
Kakashi earrings, even though you can't see it.
Ah, love it.
Nice. Well, as Mia said, we are going to be talking about Naruto for this episode. Now, obligatory, Rebecca and I are kind of late.
Something happened with sound.
Is
Are we back?
that me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Gosh, there was like a weird echo. It was very strange.
oh,
Okay,
okay. All
carry
right.
on.
Hey, a little rewind there. Okay. Yes, but we will be talking about Naruto today, and obligatory. Rebecca and I are a little bit late to the game because we just started recently watching. We finished season one like a few days ago.
It was literally yesterday,
Later,
Josh.
okay, yes. Oh gosh. Well, because your sister and her husband
Yep.
said, yeah, you gotta watch Naruto.
I know, and I've been bugging you for a long time. I'm like, we should watch this. We should watch this. And he's like, later, later, later. And I'm like, no, we
Well,
have to watch it now.
yeah. So Mia gave us a reason to, and we're really liking it so far. So we're gonna
That's good.
continue with the original Naruto, and then Shippuden after that, and then I think there is like a spinoff called Boruto or something like that.
Boruto, yeah.
Yeah.
The newer one, I think. Yeah.
It's got nothing on Naruto, but I do still watch it sometimes.
Nice.
Good to know.
But yeah, so full disclosure though, I actually just rewatched the whole show and binged through it in exactly a month leading up to this.
Oh wow.
Oh my goodness.
And I
Wow.
got excited when you guys contacted me because like I've been wanting to do that for a long time, like not just the Garra stuff, but all 720 episodes. But I was like, I don't know, like the time commitment, but like now I had a legitimate reason to. Like I'm doing this through business now. Like I'm doing it through science.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Every time we
Naruto
sat down.
all exists in my mind now.
Yeah, oh gosh. Well, obviously we did not binge all 700. We yeah, the thing about doing a podcast is like you want to do all these things and you want to watch stuff for entertainment, but with us doing something like this, we have to look at it with a critical eye sometimes, and
Yeah,
yeah,
probably have
It's
to jump
different.
around watching shows depending on what people doing, I
yeah,
imagine.
yes, right.
Right. That's why we generally like to do movies. Or it's much easier, I should say. Now, if we've already seen the
Yeah.
show, then it's like, okay, this is much easier.
Yeah.
But this was
But
something
yeah.
that we wanted to,
Yep.
that we had on our plate that we wanted to get to, and so again, this is a great opportunity. But Mia, why Naruto? Why is this one of your favorites?
See, that's the thing. I don't actually know how to explain it just beyond like,
Mhm.
oh, it has really interesting characters. It's like, some animes I love, I can tell you exactly why it's my favorite. With this one, I'm just like, I'm obviously gonna try, but I don't know. It's just like been so fascinating to me, has kept me coming back for 5 years nonstop. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, telling you my favorite character, Garra, is like probably the biggest reason why I'm so still so into this series. But I I hate how much I'm gonna have to spoil because like you've only seen like a little bit of him, but I was given permission to spoil, and
Yes, yes, you were.
I'm autistic and I like to info dump about the stuff I'm obsessed with. So
No,
that's what
no
we're gonna
problem at
do.
all. Awesome. Well, for those of you who do not know what Naruto is, it's kind of hard to like sum it up, but it is about a kid named Naruto who wants to become Hokage, which I
You
believe is like,
believe it, Josh.
yeah, he believes it. Yes, he does. Gosh, I have not heard like a catchphrase so many times,
Oh,
aside from Dr. Stone, when he
yeah.
would
Did
say,
you
"Get
watch the
excited."
sub or the dub though?
The
Okay,
dub.
well, we
Ah,
did watch the
that's
dub.
why.
Yeah, just because. Yeah, just
It's
because.
easier to process, honestly, rather
Yeah.
than reading.
And I guess, yeah, like once you get used to it, it's not so cringe like it is
It
when I
wasn't
just
like.
like randomly see a clip of something. It's like, oh God.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know if it gets better, but in the dubbed version, Naruto
He's
is
very
really
annoying.
annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my
I
gosh,
mean, there's a
stop.
number of reasons why I actually like ship it and better, but one of them is because he gets less annoying. Like he's still
Okay.
himself, but like there's that time skip, so he's a little more mature and
Right.
less of a
Mm.
crybaby, I guess. I don't
Well, that's
know.
good. Oh gosh. Um. So, you mentioned Gara, which is one of the main characters from the
Sand
Sand
Village.
Village. Yep.
Yep.
And Um, I watched a little bit. This is not really in the first season where it goes into his backstory. Um, but he
Did you actually see the backstory?
I did watch some clips
Oh,
online.
That
well, I
tear
didn't.
jerking, like makes you want to
Yes,
cry every single time.
it is. Oh gosh, it's so sad his
You just
backstory.
don't expect it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, essentially, he's labeled as a monster from birth or from early childhood. And like he has like no one to relate to. And so when you don't have anyone to relate to or to kind of like share your feelings or dump your feelings on or talk about it with, then you become reclusive. And that pretty much makes Gara who he is that we see in the series, which is just very stoic, just hates everyone, essentially.
Well, it reminds me of at the very end of the his match with Rock Lee.
Best fight in the whole show.
That was a good fight. It was a really good fight.
Oh,
Yeah, I remember Guy Sensei jumps down at the very end and he was like, "Hey, this is enough. Enough's enough, man." And
mhm.
he was like, "Why do you even care?" Gara asking Guy, and he was like, "Because Rock Lee is precious to me." And it was like, and I remember Gara's sensei was like, "Ooh, that's something that Gara doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how someone could be precious to him." And I
Which
was
I
like,
disagree
okay.
with actually, but that's a side note.
Oh.
The more you know about his character later on, it's just like, no.
Oh, guess he was misunderstood in many ways then. But yeah, I was like, something must have really happened to him in his background
Mhm.
to for someone to even say that about him.
Yeah. Ugh.
Looking for
Uh,
stuff.
Sorry,
Spoilers. I don't know. I'm just gonna do it, but
okay,
Yeah, go for
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, go.
I mean, like, yeah, because you saw, like, I mean, like, kind of towards the end of like the actual exam rounds, like, like I don't know if you got to the point where it like explains what the monster inside him is. It's like basically the same thing that Naruto has. That's a different tailed beast that was sealed inside of him
Oh.
against his will before he was even born. But yeah, it's like he like starts coming out and like they have this huge fight. I won't spoil the actual context for it, but he like has this huge fight with like the main three guys, but mostly Naruto. And like he actually like, it's kind of like a tie, but it's like the first time he's like struggled so much in a fight, like to the point of like almost dying, and it like inspires this change in him because he's like, oh, like this guy's just like me, like literally has the same kind of tailed animal thing inside of him, but yet his life looks so different. And so eventually in Shippuden, he becomes the Kazekage, the leader of his village, because he does that 180 and just becomes like the most kind and wholesome human. And my heart, I just love him, and he needs to be protected and needs to have all the love and happiness. Um, and I mean, yeah, ultimately, like his story is one of repentance, if we want to look at obvious Christian themes, but he was just like so fascinating to me, like from that first scene, because he's introduced as this like insanely powerful, mysterious, like villain type of character. Like, what's the deal with this guy? What's going on? But then, yeah, later we see his backstory, which, in my opinion, there are a lot of sad backstories in the show, but he had the saddest, like by far. But like, you saw he was like the sweetest kid in the entire world, despite being so hated and isolated until he had just every ounce of love and dignity just violently taken away from him. Um, then yeah, he becomes a leader of his village after turning away from his edgy ways, and like it's just a completely different person and has the biggest heart and forgives everyone who ever hurt him. And I've been kind of thinking about that, like if he was a real person and like this actually happened, like our attitudes would be completely different. Like there would be like outrage and a demand for justice, like this dude needs to be in prison and not made president. But in the fandom, like we love him and like we're cheering him on, like at least most of us do, because it's fiction and like we know his personality and motives and backstory so intimately. And I've just been kind of thinking like that's kind of similar to how God sees us. Like, no matter how other people see us or what we've done, like, He knows everything there is to know about us and more, and still loves us, still wants to be with us, and like doesn't hold stuff over us. That's yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it because you're right. Gosh, if we pulled the same situation into real life, there would be outrage. We wouldn't make him president. We wouldn't. Yeah, that's really, really, really interesting. But you're right. That is how God looks at us. We've done all these terrible things against him, and yet he doesn't hold it over us and forgives us and says, "Hey, you know what? We're actually going to adopt you into the family. How about that? And you get to be a princess or a prince." And you're like, "Wow, I don't
Yeah.
deserve this."
uh, it was interesting too how like in his backstory, we have that scene where he's talking to his uncle about the pain in his heart that he doesn't know how to make it go away. This is literally like a 6-year-old kid who just deserves the world. But he's saying that, and Yashimaru says, the only medicine for wounds of the heart is love. And I was like, yes, preach. And then Gahu was
Oh.
like, oh, like I need some of that. Like, where do I get it? And he's like, it's already been given to you by me and your mom before she died. And I was kind of like, wait, what? Like, I don't get it. And I think we get that way with God's love a lot of times too. Like, we
Yeah.
don't always notice it and we don't always have the feels or recognize it in the midst of pain and chaos, but that doesn't mean it's not there and that it hasn't been given to
Right.
us. Like, it was given to us while we were still enemies, and if we choose to believe it and receive it, then it's ours. And I mean, of course, there's that whole betrayal later with Yashimaru that made me hate him. So not a perfect illustration, obviously, but yeah, I mean, you saw that scene where I was just like, dude, I will fight you. I will climb into the screen and fight you. Like, leave my alone. But that's what sent Garra into his edgy years, was like being told that he was never loved and was unlovable. And
Oh.
what ends up turning around again later on is when he was finally shown even just a little bit of kindness and empathy. Like, I don't know, I had canon that Jesus would have shown him compassion. Like like I mean he'd know his heart. Like I'm just imagining a scene on like The Chosen or something that Garra was in it just talking to Jesus. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so awful. No one deserves to hear or be told that they are unlovable. Like, oh, how awful. That's heartbreaking.
It's like
I'm
on
sure it'll
top.
it'll still be heartbreaking, I'm sure, when we get to that point in the show.
Oh yeah. Mm. I've seen it like a million times and it still makes me
Oh.
And kind of yeah, that's definitely, you know, that's why I want to bring Garra up, because it was one of our main points. And again, your favorite character. But get into Naruto as a whole. Within the first season, when we start out, Naruto is kind of like, I guess you would say, like an outsider in his class,
Very much so an
because
outsider.
he's slacking off, and he doesn't have his, like, you know uh what's the name, his transformation, shinju or
Jutsu?
jujutsu,
Mhm.
and um barely passes to go into training to become a ninja. um but what we one thing that we picked out is, during the tuning exams and during training between the trio of Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto, was just this feeling, especially on Sakura's part, of just feeling useless and helpless. When you're in a team of three, you kind of feel like you're the weakest link. Like, what am I doing? Because Sakura, like, at least to us, like, she really did, like, aside from being a cheerleader, she really didn't
She was
like,
the weakest link.
That's
she
like
didn't
why
like
she's so
nothing.
infamous. She gets better later on, I promise. But
Oh,
yeah.
thank goodness. That first season, I mean, she had a transformation a bit, or
Yeah.
awakening, I guess,
Oh
Yeah.
at
gosh.
one point,
Yeah,
but
it was like when
Always
they,
takes her back down as soon as she has a moment. And it's
yes.
uh,
I consider it to be a writing glitch more than Sakura herself. But
It was like when
goodness.
Naruto did the little introduction. It's like Sakura blossoms. I'm like, finally.
She needs to blossom. Ooh.
But I brought that up because I think in our Christian walk, we see that, oh, I'm not contributing enough, or this person's up here, I'm down here. What am I doing? I'm not. I feel helpless. I feel useless in, ministry or my Christian walk, or influencing others to come to Christ. And um, I think this is a great juxtaposition to what Sakura feels like. I'm doing nothing. Naruto and Sasuke are, you know, pulling their own weight and mine. And when we get into these trials and tribulations, I, I'm just standing here, like, just being a bystander. And in the Christian walk, I think we all have at times, like, become a bystander of, like, hey, they have a team doing this. I don't need to volunteer. I don't need to serve. My contribution doesn't really mean a whole lot. Where in reality, the truth is your contribution can mean life or death, in terms of, like, winning someone over to Christ.
Oh, in that term, yes. I was
Yeah.
like, and not in children's ministry,
No.
like that's not a life or death thing. But yes, it's very good to volunteer. um, yeah, and I think I like I was wondering where you were going with that, but yeah, I think just like Sakura, sometimes we are a little bit useless in a way. Um, but we have that thing inside of us, all of us do, that is unique and special in a way that we can contribute our very own jutsu that's unique to us, that we can contribute to the world and to the fight. And yeah, it's important. We're not useless. We have a very specific purpose. Paul talks a lot about, I forget where it is. I think it's in Corinthians. You're talking about we're all one body. We can't all be eyes. We can't all be noses. We can't all be mouths. Like some of us are a liver. Some of some of us are, the one pinky finger, It's but we all make up the full body and it's important and we don't function as well without one.
Funny. When you guys sent me the list of questions, I saw the like feeling useless part, and I'm like, they're totally talking about soccer. Like, who is this now? But yeah, that's interesting though. I haven't thought about in terms of Christianity, but I mean, yeah, like I've always felt useless my whole life, but like God still saw me as worth dying for. Like even if I didn't do anything ever, like God doesn't look at us the way that we look at anime characters who don't contribute.
Right.
You look at Sakura like someone who's just like holding it back, like just let her die, whatever. But that is that's not Jesus.
That's right.
Right. And on that same kind of like topic and overall theme of feeling um useless or worthless, like in the like what we think we don't have much to contribute, like there are countless stories in the Bible where God has taken like somebody very ordinary who probably thought that they weren't, worth much, and used them for great things.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite examples is Moses. I
Mhm.
mean, when God spoke
Speaking
to
of
him
the
in the
speech
burning.
impediment stuff, like
Exactly. Yeah, he was like, "Lord, me? No, no. I'm a murderer. I've got a speech impediment. I can't speak in front of crowds. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry. Find someone else." God was like, "Okay. Seriously? No, I still choose you." And he was still he's still so gracious enough, God was, to say, "Okay, fine. If you think you can't speak in front of people, appoint Aaron to be the person
Mhm,
who actually speaks to the people, but Aaron's going to say the words that I speak to you." And so he finds a way to work with us, and God would have made him strong and made him he would have been much more of a miracle if Moses hadn't have put himself down so much, I think.
mhm.
Obviously
And
there's
it
a
like tells more of God's power too, because if he had chose someone who was already eloquent, then it's just like,
right.
okay, cool, he knows how to give speeches. It's not like this guy's giving a speech. Like, what happened?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So God loves to use people who are the misfits and the outcast. Um yeah.
And jumping on to one of our other points of, I guess we would say it kind of goes back to the first kind of like training that we had the trio of Sasuke,
Mhm.
Sakura, and Naruto in, where they think they're a team, but they are all thinking like individually, and that's where
Oh, yes.
oh, what is their teacher's name?
Kakashi.
Kakashi,
How could you
yes.
Okay.
forget Kakashi,
Sorry.
Josh?
Yeah. Listen,
Everyone's
there.
apparently obsessed with him. All the merch I've seen
Oh
is
yeah,
Kakashi. I mean, he's great.
yeah, he's definitely up there for me.
But Kakashi, instills in them your teammates are, if one of you fails, your whole team fails. It's about lifting each other up, understanding one another so that you can succeed in your missions or your class A, C, D tasks, whatever it is, so that you can have success in those. And for Naruto, definitely takes him some time to kind of get that through. Um, but I think in terms of like just worldly and Christianity as well, just like you said, Mia, with the church having that gap of kind of that ignorance of not knowing, like people like you are similar, that these people exist and they have these they have these struggles, they have these things that they deal with, but do we really take the time to understand that? And unfortunately, I don't think we do. A lot of the times, whatever like differences we have, we say we acknowledge, oh, there's difference about us, but we keep it at that and we don't really go any further. Would you say that's right? Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I'm thinking about it as you were talking, and I think there are people who do. There are people who, if it's brought to their attention, then they'll think about it and go, "Gosh, yeah, I should." And then there's other people who just love people, I don't know, they don't really think much about it. I think there's a good mix, but overall, yeah, I do think um it's hard. I don't know. That's all I got to say. I didn't have very much, honestly. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
And later on, you'll see like why Kakashi values teamwork so much. Like there's a whole big thing behind it because he was not always like that. Um, but yeah, like I remember, yeah, watching the first time too. I was just like, what are you guys doing? If you just like would make a plan and like ambush him
Yeah.
or something instead of just trying to wing it, like, um,
Yeah, it's important. And then they eventually, the second time they were tested by Kakashi, they very explicitly were told, if you share food or something, then you
mhm,
will fail and you'll
yeah,
all be disqualified. And they had to make a choice. Do we protect our teammate or go against the rules, or stay with the rules? And
mhm,
they were like, well, we got to protect our teammate. It's important.
mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. The one person that we haven't talked about yet is Sasuke. He's an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, he's still at a point where he's still kind of cool and isn't full on edgy and horrible. Um,
Yeah, I can definitely see
it's,
him
I
going in a direction where
mean, I think he'll
it
almost
gets
say that like it's
worse.
not that much further, but yeah,
Does he have a redemptive story? Oh
yes,
no.
but it takes until like the end of the show.
Oh
Okay.
no.
Okay.
But yeah, like I mean, yeah, like he leaves the village. I mean, like Naruto going after Sasuke is like the whole premise of the show, so I don't even consider it to be much of a spoiler. But
Uh,
um, yeah, like the interesting thing about even just like Naruto himself is that like he's wanted to be Hokage since episode 1, and for a while it was just so that he could be acknowledged. But like as it goes on, like it becomes so much more than that. Like he wants to bring like genuine, lasting peace and like end the cycle of hatred between all the nations. Like it's not just about himself anymore, and I think that's ultimately like one of the main points of the show. But then like you say like, oh, the main thing is going after Sasuke. But it's like even with that, like, you like to poke fun at like his obsession with Sasuke, but it's still just like, shifting the focus away from himself and onto the safety and well-being of someone else, because the reason why he leaves is like very dangerous and not in his best interest. um but yeah, I mean, like, we make fun of that, like, oh, like, he just doesn't give up on Sasuke. Everything's about Sasuke, but it's at the same time, it's kind of like, is that not similar to how God pursues us and doesn't give up on us? Like, does he not leave the 99 to go find the one lost sheep? Like, I mean, obviously, unlike with Naruto, he's not forceful about it. Like, if someone really doesn't want him, he's not gonna drag them kicking and screaming into heaven. But yeah, like I've been seeing people who have seen that parallel, and I was just kind of like, huh, like I didn't think about it that way, but it's so true.
Yeah, it is interesting. Um, I love the that wow, as you were talking, I was like, wow, that sounds like what God does for us. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, kind of just to ramp. I think one of our last points, and you kind of already said it. Naruto kind of being a little bit like a Christ-like figure, whereas he wants to become, the leader of that redemptive solution to end all hatred, to end all separation between all nations, and just bring everlasting peace. And when Jesus returns, that's what it's going to be. So that is a great parallel, I would say.
It's funny, like, going back to Garra, like, I mean, to him, like, Naruto is that Christ-like figure, like, ever since he, like, changes, like, the dude cannot stop talking about how Naruto saved him from darkness, kinda like how a lot of us as Christians, when we get saved, we wanna talk about Jesus all the time and
Yeah.
all he's done for us, and, like, I know I get like that sometimes, it's probably super annoying to a lot of people, but it's like, I can't help it, like, but with Garra, like, I just think it's a fun illustration of why we get like that, um, as Christians, like, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but, like, for me, it's not because I wanna, like, Bible thump you into submission, but it's just because it's like, I wanna tell you about this awesome thing that God did for me, like, he saved me, like, I was not always this way, he saved my heart, like, there's this meme that I've seen a lot that says, like, um, every time God meets someone, like, let me tell you about my Lord and Savior, Naruto Uzumaki. And it's like, no one likes it when Christians say that, and like sometimes understandably so, but um, with him, us fans are just like, oh, like, most of us love him so much because of the effects that Naruto had on him and the transformation that happened. Like Jesus transforms us when we genuinely choose to follow him. And like I always want to tell people, like, as annoying as I might be now, like I promise you would not have liked me, the kind of person I was had I never become a Christian. I mean, like I wasn't going out stand coffining people like other was, but I was still like extremely hateful and unpleasant until God changed my heart.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how yeah, we tolerate things in movies and TV shows that we don't necessarily tolerate
Yeah.
in real life. Like we were talking about that earlier. Um, but yeah, the same kind of thing here. And it's yeah, it's like I'm just talking out of my experience and out of what I love. And I think it's received better when it is said from the heart and of just like because it's I don't know, it's more real, I guess, more genuine
Yeah.
than just like the preacher on the street doing, repent, the end is near.
Yeah.
Which is like, yes, that's true, but should we be going
That has
about it that way?
never worked on anyone, like ever.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I've never heard the testimony of like, yeah, I was walking downtown. There was a guy with a sandwich board sign on, and he was shouting at people,
Screaming
and
abusive things at me, and I just
yeah,
dropped
Right.
everything. Like, you like
yes,
my worldview has changed.
exactly.
I see that
Oh,
happen on social media a lot now. What are
yeah.
you people doing?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of all the points that we had on Naruto, but we want to go ahead and jump into our last segment. We usually do this on the first Friday of the month, but again, as we told you all earlier this month, we're going to kind of save that for the end of September, just because we were watching a lot of the same things and we didn't have much of an update for you guys. But it is time for What Are We Watching?
This is what we're watching this week.
And this is just the part of the show and this is part of the podcast where we just talk about what we're enjoying listening to, watching, playing, reading, all the stuff of just what is making us happy this week and just what we're doing for pure enjoyment, entertainment. So, Mia, what are you listening to, playing, watching? Again, you don't have to give us all those things, but what are you enjoying lately?
Yeah, and I mean, after the big Naruto binge,
Yes.
oh yeah, I'm gonna have to start getting caught up on One Piece again because I'm a little bit behind on that. If you think Naruto's long, One Piece is well over 1,000 episodes and still going. So I'm kind of slowly, like with a friend once a week, watching The Disastrous Life of Psyche K. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's amazing. It's like the ultimate parody of every single anime trope in existence. Just ridiculousness. That one's been fun. Um, Kind of like on and off. Like I've been like going through, like I know we were talking about Kingdom Hearts when you contacted me. I'm like kind of I've never played those games before, so I'm going through them. it's funny because like I'm seeing like so much Christian stuff in those games too. Like one of them has so much Jesus symbolism going on with King Mickey, but yeah, just kind of slowly. I finally beat Roxas, even though that took like 1,000 years because that fight is not fair.
Oh, and it is so not there. No, okay, like okay, for those of you who are not Kingdom Hearts fans, which I know why you would not be, but if you aren't, in Kingdom Hearts 2, you fight Roxas, and there's a whole bunch of backstory that I could go into, but don't have time right now. In that fight,
Jesse McCartney.
yeah, yes, in that fight, I died, gosh, 8, 10 times maybe before I finally worked out a
Only
strategy.
times.
And when okay, so there, you do get a couple chances at a reprieve, but it's very quick. You get a menu option that comes up, and you don't know where the option is going to be. Could be the top option, could be the middle, could be the last one, but it says the end, and that's where you steal Rox's 2 Keyblades, just start going ham on him. But if you're not that quick, kind of lost cause. The only thing that's going to save you is either that or just great strategy, because apparently Sora doesn't know dodge roll instantly, and that's something you have to acquire in
Oh,
one
I
of the
never
drive
got it.
forms.
I learned it up to like level 70 something. That's how I beat him, and I still didn't get it.
Yeah, I gave up on the drive forms. I'm like, listen, I'm just kind of gonna do whatever. Um,
It's illegal how hard that was.
yes. I guess I'll go next. So we're still watching a couple of cuckoos on Crunchyroll. So that's been they're interesting into more of the story on that.
Yeah, it's
And
going is this is the one that's going in a direction that we're not quite sure about, right?
yeah, right, right.
Where he's basically in love with his he grew up with her as his sister, but he's kind of in love with her. And then
Oh,
this random girl that he's was switched places with at birth, and then a girl he's had a crush on forever. And it's like he can't make up his mind. And I'm like, oh no, where are you going with this?
I
maybe
mean,
go for the one who's not supposed to be a sister.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right.
I mean, at least he's not as bad as the guy in Rent a Girlfriend. He just doesn't know what he wants.
I gave up on that. That's too
Yeah.
much.
We still need to go back to Skeleton Knight in Another World. That one's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Entertaining.
yeah. As far as games go, I finally finished God of War, which was great. So I'm definitely looking forward to Ragnarok, which is coming out soon. I tried the game for Returnal. Um, I gave up after about a couple hours. For those of you who don't know, anytime you die or you quit out of the game, it doesn't auto save. There is no save option. You just play it, and if you die, you get sent back to where you started from. I'm like, listen, I like challenging games. I'm not having any of this.
That's for the people who want to sit down and binge it all in
Yeah.
one sitting.
Well, it even comes up with a disclaimer on the first screen of the game. It's like, this is meant to be a challenging game. Challenging, not impossible.
Well, it's a good thing they gave you that, warning,
Yeah,
so you knew.
yeah, the developers is like, there's going to be a guy named Josh who's going to
Meh.
play this, and we got to make it really difficult so he won't play it. But Rebecca, what have you been? What aside from what we watched together, what have you been up to?
Well, I have been going through Hunter x Hunter.
Oh, that's a
Um,
good one.
oh, it's so good.
It's
It's
similar to
so good.
Naruto too, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's excellent. I think where am I? Season 5?
is
I
it with
think
the chimera ants, the weird?
yes. Yeah.
That's like a beloved season, but I was not a fan. I don't know. It was just
I
to
I'm
me.
I'm not a huge fan of this season. Like I'm watching it, it's good. I want to know what happens, but
Yeah.
I liked the other seasons better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've
But
like all but given up hope of that series coming out of hiatus one day.
so it's
Well,
not finished. It just kind of
yeah,
leaves on
I
a
mean, the last season is just like 10 episodes or something, and like, I mean, it kind of feels like an ending, but it's extremely unsatisfying and so many questions. And
uh,
yeah, like the manga, I guess, is still going on. I haven't kept up, but like it only gets updated once like every few years or something. But
uh,
yeah,
well, that's disappointing, but I'm still gonna finish.
yeah.
Fab. Molly just decided, one of our dogs, she decided, I'm gonna take my claw and just dig it into your thigh.
Pay attention. My cats do that daily.
Uh,
Oh, what is?
Molly's tail is wagging and hitting the. Molly, sit.
Can you still hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Her
Sorry.
tail was hitting one of the cords, and we were getting these notifications on the screen that was like, "Your mic is off. Your mic is on. Your mic is," and then we were like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what's happening?"
Lock my cats out of here because they would be jumping all over.
Yeah, we need to start locking the dogs out of here.
Except that they would start scratching on the door, going, "Ooh, ooh." Like, oh my gosh,
Just can't
never
win.
ending. Yeah.
Yep.
So other than Hunter x Hunter, I I think I think I've mentioned before that I now have a Nintendo Switch, which is
Yes.
very
Okay.
exciting. Yes. So still going through Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Okay. I actually just played that for the first time like a few months ago.
Yeah, it's really fun. I really enjoy it.
It was
Mm.
fun. I was just expecting more because it was so hyped up.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I have nothing to compare to, and
Yeah.
I've
I'm
read nothing
very
about
much
it, so
like a plot gamer, and so since there was like a lack of plot, I think that was probably my biggest thing.
got it. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I've expanded my library though
Yeah.
to
By one
include.
game. Let's not
Okay,
get too
technically
crazy.
it's like two games because you get
Oh
two in
yeah, yeah,
one.
that's right.
So I'm playing Overcooked,
Ooh,
which is
I've
really
heard of that
fun.
one.
Yeah, it's a crazy puzzle game, is what it is.
It gave me anxiety when we played it on
It's just a
multiplayer.
lot of anxiety. Okay, even single though, because you're having to like make make food. You're a chef basically, and you have to make these recipes that just pop up and get them out to customers. And so you have to make lots and lots of them.
Like Cooking Mama kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I like that. And on some of the levels though, I did this one that was like a pirate ship where some of the set would move occasionally.
Oh.
You'd be like, "No, I can't need it to go over there." And so it gets even harder, but it's fun when you want something that's tense and
When
builds
you want
communications.
anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. Builds communication skills, so that's good.
It doesn't. One thing I do want to mention as far as gaming goes, I did go ahead and play Control, which is about this girl who has like psychic abilities, and she's trying to um, disconnect like the source from what's called the organization, and save her brother, who is his mind has been taken over by this thing called the Hiss, which is these people who are represented by this like red color, like think of like the Blue Man Group, but they're red, and
It's a funny way to say that.
and they're just bad guys. But that was a lot of fun. Just kind of an open world the game as well, like had like different tasks and different missions that you could do, so that was a lot of fun. Other than that, not any other games that I'm playing. Um, but there is one that you might get, that new one for like Hogwarts that's coming out for Switch.
Maybe. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, you want to get the Demon Slayer one, I know, for Switch.
I do want Demon Slayer. Yes.
Yeah. So we want to thank Mia once again for joining us on our podcast. Mia, if people want to follow you, kind of stay up to date with what's going on with you, how can they do that?
So I'm mainly on Instagram, like Twitter too, but I don't use it that much these days. It's Miya Sae official. It's MIYASAE. And then miyasae.com is the website. We do like if you like sign up for the email list, you can get a free devotional that is anti-shame, like the stuff we were talking about. And yeah, I am hopefully eventually will get my book published, but until then, yeah, the updates will mostly be on Instagram.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, if you want to see the full conversation with us and Mia, you can go over to our YouTube channel, again, Hallelujah, and you can find that there. You can also follow us on our socials, again, Hallelujah Podcast on Instagram, Hallelujah on Twitter and Facebook. Once again, we want to thank all of you for listening. And until next time, keep those halos shiny and stay holy, my friends.
Bye, guys. Thank you for listening to the Hallelujah podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to keep up with all the latest information. We would love to hear your comments and questions about today's episode, as well as suggestions for future episodes. You can message us on our socials or email us at contact@hallelujah.com. Ooh, just in time.
Yeah, the barking brigade started. All right, let me go and start recording.